Let's understand transaction. Right now, we have this table right here. And now let's say we want to change the power level of Saitama to 20,000. But we're not sure whether we want to keep those changes later on or not. So we want to make it possible to either roll back those changes later and get to the previous state, or commit those changes later on. And that is where we can use a transaction. So in order to start a transaction, we are going to say start transaction, semicolon. And right here, we can now create a transaction. So what do we want to do? We want to update users. We want to set the power underline level to 20,000, where our ID is equal to 1, because that is the ID of Saitama. And actually, it is obviously the heroes table. So we are going to update the heroes. We'll execute. And now Saitama should have a power level of 20,000. So we're going to select everything from heroes. Let's run that one. We're getting Saitama, who has a power level of 20,000 right now. But let's say we don't really like this change. So we're going to roll back the change. So in order to roll back the changes that we've made instead of our transaction, we can use rollback. We're going to execute. We roll back. Everything seems to work. Now let's select everything from heroes. Let's execute. And as you can see, now our power level is 10,000 again. Now, there's also an alternative to rollback. So let's again start a transaction to create a new transaction. This time we're going to update heroes, set power level equal to 20,000, where ID is equal to 1. So we'll say that the power level of Saitama is again 20,000. We're going to execute. And instead of rolling back, we can also commit our changes. And once we commit the changes, they are stored inside of our database permanently. So let's commit. We committed. Let's select everything from heroes. We're going to run that one. And as you can see now, Saitama has a power level of 20,000. And even if we wanted to try to roll back the changes, you can see we did this rollback. We did not affect any rows. So again, let's select everything from heroes. And as you can see, our power level is still 20,000. So the usual workflow is you start a transaction. Right here, you define what you want to do. So for example, update heroes, set power level equal to 30,000, where ID is equal to 1. So right here, after the start transaction, you define what you want to do. And then you either commit or you roll back later on. So obviously, you would execute that statement first of all. Then you have a started transaction and you end the transaction by using either commit or using rollback. If you use rollback, you undo the changes. If you use commit, you permanently store the changes inside of the database. But there's also something else, and that is a save point. So we can, for example, say we want to create a save point SP1 right here. And now we want to update the heroes again. And we're going to say that, for example, that king right here, so essentially king is the ID number 3, will have a power level of 100,000, for example, like so. So we're going to execute those changes. Now we're going to select everything from heroes. We're going to run that query. Now king has a power level of 100,000, but I think this is pretty unrealistic, right? So maybe we want to undo those changes. So we can roll back point number 1, since we want to keep the changes for Saitama maybe. So we can say roll back to which point do we want to roll back? We want to roll back to point SP1, since that was the save point that we've defined. We're going to execute that statement. And now we're going to select everything from heroes. We're going to execute the code right here. And as you can see, now King's power level is 7,500, but Saitama's power level is still 30,000, because we only undid the changes up to the point of SP1, or after the point of SP1 to be precise. But all of the changes before the save point of SP1 are still inside of our database. And now we could either again commit or roll back all of those changes. And in our case, I'm going to commit, so the changes will be stored in our database permanently. So using rollback 2 will not end the transaction, whereas commit and rollback will end the transaction and either commit or do an entire rollback of the entire transaction.